Hi, my name is Janet Harder, and I'm co-founder of JHMJ Coaching and Consulting with my business partner, Michaela Yellen. And it is a company where we train other professionals in parent coaching. We also do training in Early Start Denver model and work directly with families using a parent coaching model. I'm also a co-author of Relationship Strength-Based Coaching, which has come out of a lot of years of experience, and I'm going to talk to you more about that. And also a co-author on SLP Common Core, which is a SLP goal bank for speech pathologists that is hosted by UniTi, which is an online practice management platform. And I am also a business owner. I have a private practice and work as a speech-language pathologist, behavior consultant, and I'm a mother of two amazing adult children, if I can call them that. And I am so excited today to share my journey to where I am now in my professional career. And I have to say that the last 10 years of my career have been the most amazing for me. I started out, I grew up on a farm. I was a farm kid, and that was a great place to learn hard work. And I was the youngest of three siblings. And I always wanted to be the peacemaker in the family. I realized I liked it when people were happy around me. And so as a farm kid, I was busy, but also did so many sports when I was younger and loved science. I found out that science was something that drew me in, and I wondered what I would do with science, and initially thought, well, maybe I'll be a pediatrician. I loved working with kids. I loved helping. That was something I recognized even when I was young. The thing I also did when I was young and in school is advocate for others. And so I decided to go to university back east and did my degree in speech-language pathology and graduated actually not knowing if it was the right field for me. I really didn't get a good sense through my training if it was a good match. And I started my first job up in northern BC in a small community, and it was in a child development center. And I think actually working in the real world, even though I had had practicums, they were at the university. And so being able to start my journey in a child development center with children, with other professionals on a team, and learning how I could take that knowledge from university and apply it, it was a great place to start. It was a community that had a lot of community spirit. And the team that I had, I worked with occupational therapists and the classroom teachers. And that I realized was also really important to me early on, is having a strong team. Now I changed jobs and went into the school district. I met my husband, future husband up there, and we moved to another community where I went into the school district. And that is where I met Dr. J, and he was in charge of special education. And I had, again, an amazing of professionals, the psychologists in the school district, learning disabilities teacher, and mentorship I received in that school district. Strong feelings about that. We would stay late on Friday nights to learn as a group. We were able to spend 3 hours with families in our individual education planning meetings and truly use a collaborative approach and brainstorm with the families. And it was amazing. We did together. We did peer coaching. And this was a long time ago. So the innovation that Dr. J had at that time, I am so thankful for. Now, unfortunately, leadership changed, and after 13 years, I was feeling really burnt out in that position. My dad had Alzheimer's, and we had 2 young kids, and I really wanted to get back to be around family because that's also really important to me. So I was extremely fortunate that my brother-in-law saw an advertisement for a job with First Nations in my hometown. So my husband was working out of town. He was doing three weeks away and 1 week home. Something that I said I would never do is have a husband who worked out of town. And I learned to never say never. And that allowed us to move because it didn't matter where we lived, where our home was, because he was traveling. And so I took a job with the First Nations organization in my hometown. And again, learning was hard sometimes for me. Culturally, I had to learn to be sensitive, and sometimes I wasn't always. I learned how to be a better listener and ask questions. And again, another experience that has shaped me and taught me what I also needed as a professional, but also the skills I needed to get better at as a professional. The work that I did with this First Nations group, for me, was the first time as a professional I had way more freedom to actually support families in the way I wanted to support them. So I was going to do whatever it took to support the families and the children. And if that meant driving a child to their ENT appointment because the parent didn't have a car, couldn't get their child there, and it was critical that the child got there, I had the freedom to do that. I had the freedom to really advocate and support families where they were at in that moment. And that was a first, because my other work had been in systems, and I realized that systems, although they have good people in them often, they often also don't have the flexibility that we need to support families, that we have these rules that inhibit creativity. And so it was freeing to be able to do what I felt I needed to do to support families. Now, there was a little boy, and he was my first little autistic child that I worked with, and I loved supporting him. And I realized, along with another occupational therapist, that our community really lacked services for the neurodiverse community. And so in 2008, I had been doing private practice, but in 2010, I went into full-time private practice. I really wanted to support families where they were at. I wanted to be able to do what I thought was right for children and families and not be constrained by systems. So I took the leap, and with an occupational therapist and a psychologist. We formed a team and started really our specialty and our learning was working with neurodiverse children. And that was a steep learning curve. I did a lot of training. I went and did certs. I went and did floor time. I went and did RDI so that I could figure out what was a good fit for me. Now, at the same time, in our community and for the funding, we needed a behavior consultant. And unfortunately, the person who thought they were going to be able to do that wasn't able to do that. Now, I love learning. I've been a learner all my life. So I said, okay, I'll jump the hoops, as that was how I viewed it, to be able to access the funding the way that the requirements sort of laid it out. So I started my journey to complete my Board Certified Behavior Analyst coursework and practicum and exam. And in starting that journey, my supervisor, who was also an SLP, said, hey, let's go and do our ESDM, our Early Start Denver model training. Let's go do our intro and advanced workshop. And being someone who loves learning, I said, sure. And I really didn't investigate what the workshop was about. I just went, great, learning, let's go. And I arrived at the workshop, and we did the intro, and all my learning to date had been sitting in those conferences, sitting in the seat, listening, taking notes, and then trying to go and put it into practice. And sometimes I was successful, and other times I forgot it, and maybe I wasn't putting it into practice the way it was supposed to. So that was our first day in our intro. And then we started the next day in the advanced workshop. And I arrived, it was a much smaller group, and I'm looking around, and the trainer starts and goes, okay, so we need to get going because in 45 minutes, your families will arrive. And I stopped and went, families will arrive? I had not realized that this was a workshop where we were going to be in a small group of 5 people. One colleague I knew, the other 3 I did not. And we were going to be putting into practice the theory that we had learned the day before with support, with the parents sitting in the room. I started shaking. I had never in my professional career, which was quite a few years at that point, put myself in that kind of learning position. I was going to be extremely vulnerable. I didn't know the trainer, and I was so nervous. I made it through the 3 days, finished the 3 days, and went, oh my goodness. Well, this was probably the hardest thing I had ever done from a learning point of view. And I always thought of myself as a really good learner. It was the best thing that I ever did. It changed my thinking. So I went on in the process. I did my apprentice trainership. I did it twice. And I did it twice because I had a friend who was diagnosed with cancer right when I went to start, and I realized the emotional piece. I wasn't as present as I needed to be, and I doubted myself in those moments. And so I just, we could view that as a failure. I viewed it as recognizing sometimes we just can't bring our whole self to a learning situation. And I use that now with families. And so I redid it. And then part of being a trainer is you have to go and do your PESDM, which is the parent coaching piece. Now, I had always taken pride in my relationship with families. I felt that I had strong relationships with families. I felt my families liked me and I liked my families. I enjoyed my work with the families and children. I thought I was strong at relationship. I thought I was good at giving suggestions to families, and families would leave and they seemed happy with my services. And going to the parent coaching is when I met Michaela. So we went down, and even though we watched videos before we kind of went, well, we're not quite getting it, but we think we do this, or sort of do it. We didn't. And I think that aha moment was probably in my career, the second biggest aha moment. So we went through the workshop again. We knew we were going to do it with a family this time, so I was prepared for that. But I recognized through these two learning opportunities that I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that I knew what to do and say. And I'd been doing this work for a long time. I also recognized that I was so uncomfortable with the thought of a parent being uncomfortable. I wanted those relationships, and I didn't understand that to really have a strong collaborative relationship with a family and for them to learn, just like for me to learn, it's uncomfortable. So through that training and the earlier training, I learned a lot about what was holding me back as a professional. And I needed to be comfortable with families and parents also being uncomfortable in the learning process. And I realized I actually didn't have the tools to support parents in that. So that experience changed my practice, and to the point where I can't go back. I use a parent coaching approach with all my families. After that workshop, Michaela and another colleague, we started to, all three of us were trainers, and we started to really work on supporting others in learning the ESDM, but taking the learning about myself and that you can still have a strong relationship. And in fact, having a really strong relationship means that people can be really vulnerable with you, that they can be uncomfortable. And that learning is going to be so much more impactful and deeper for the individuals going through it. My best learning has been when I have big emotional reactions, when it's almost like an emotional release, you're holding it, you're struggling, and in those ahas, it gets released. And I see that in the trainees I support, and I see that in the families. So after that training and the three of us doing some more training, I had the opportunity to be involved in a research project. And this research project was in our province of British Columbia, and I was one of the coach trainers. And so we had child development centers throughout BC, and we supported individuals, so occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists, physiotherapists, in learning the content of the ESDM in that content, and then they learned it, they practiced it, and did the intervention with children. And then they learned how to coach parents. So it was looking at training those professionals to do parent coaching. And again, what an amazing opportunity. And I realized how much I loved watching other professionals go through that struggle, that uncomfortableness, that learning about self and coming out the other side, and understanding how that relationship is so powerful. From there, I was continuing in my private practice, working with families. One thing that Michaela and I realized through that process is that while I could do it with the content we learned it on in the ESDM, I couldn't switch it to when I wore my, I want to say what people think of when they think of speech-language pathologists. I couldn't switch it to working on speech with kids. I still was the expert. I still involved parents, I want to say in a token way, be like, okay, you're part of this process and we're doing things, but I would take over. I didn't really know how to take that information and put it into that other area of expertise I had to the full extent that I believed I needed to. And I had to admit to myself that I didn't really think maybe parents were capable. And so I then, with Michaela, we really looked at why could we not shift? Or why could I not shift? And we started really looking at what were the components of this parent coaching. There were sometimes when we would watch others in our trainees doing parent coaching, and it's like they would do all the right things, but there was something missing. And this is where the start of the relationship strength-based coaching professional development program came from. Michaela was doing her PhD, and she really took a deep dive into what were these critical components. And she did her PhD on that. And so that's how we have sort of come to the relationship strength-based coaching, because the relationship part, well, again, I thought I had a strong relationship. I needed to trust parents, and I needed to let go of that control and really support parents in their learning at just the right level. And if I did that in the right way and trusted myself in giving them information at the right level so they could reach their goals with their child, so that their child could be understood by others. And again, we're thinking of in this specific speech area, If I could do that, I could work myself out of a job. And that's my goal with families, that the parents are empowered and confident, and they have the knowledge going forward, because they will always be with their child. So I went into that uncomfortable place again of really doing that collaborative relationship so that I could switch my interactions in that area that I was still struggling with, that speech area. And I was blown away. I have so underestimated parents in their ability to learn and come up with ideas to how to support their child with speech. The professional, was holding families back. And remember, I was successful. I had a lot of success, and I had no idea that I could be in these relationships with parents and have even more impact. And so I have parents, and I will sit there and I will say, you know what? I never would have done that. But you did, because you are the expert on your child. You know where that line of frustration is. You know what motivates your child. You know in the moment where you can continue to try and get a correct production. If it's a word we're targeting, you know when to switch. And they know because they have that expertise. And I have my expertise. And when it comes together, it's amazing. I am so amazed by the families I work with. And so through me learning about what made me uncomfortable, what areas in myself through my learning journey I needed to change to really bring out these gifts in the parents that then resulted in the change in the children. It has brought, and I said this yesterday, such joy. I loved my work before. I felt successful working with children and families, but I never had the joy I feel. I was in a parent coaching session yesterday. Both the parent and myself wanted to cry. It is so joyful to watch parents and their confidence and this connection and their feeling of success as they bring their expertise and I can bring my expertise together in these true collaborative partnerships. I feel so fortunate that I took that journey. And I am so passionate about supporting others and seeing them take that journey. It is so, so hard. I was impatient with myself. I was upset with myself. I sometimes wanted to give up and didn't think, in those harder situations that it was something that, not that it wasn't worth it, but that it was tiring and difficult. And it was so much more comfortable going back to, the expert hat on. That's a comfortable place because I spent so many years. Now this is comfortable, but it doesn't mean that that things aren't still hard, that I still have to kind of shush those little voices that want me to make it easier for myself. But I know that if I can quiet those voices, that going through this hard, the joy that is at the other end for families and children is so worth it. The other project, my SLP Common Core, something about myself is I like efficiency. I do not like wasting time on things that take away from my work with families. Paperwork has always been one of those areas. And so when I was approached by Ricardo at Unitas TI to do this goal bank for SLPs, I loved the idea because I had been doing that. I had been creating all of my own goal banks, creating goal banks that were highly flexible because we know that the same goals do not work for all kids. We have to adjust them. Every family's unique, every child's unique, and if we're using the same goals, that's not meeting the needs of a family. That was also something in my ESDM training. I have been teaching professionals on how to write goals, how to write them with the teaching steps so that it is adapted to the specific child in front of them. And so I was excited, but also knew that it was going to be hard work. I was excited because what drove me to do this was to create, or my hope is to create efficiency for other speech-language pathologists so that they can spend more time in direct services with families, with children, and really reduce and make efficient the time that those administrative tasks take. And so that has been a hard journey, but worthwhile. And Michaela in this process, she is always the person who, between all of the things we've done, and Michaela, we always talk about research and evidence-based because that is also what drives us. So things change over time. We know that research from before changes. And so the other goal of the SLP Common Core was really to make sure that it was supported by the evidence and the research. So we've really tried to incorporate that, some references to resources and research to support professionals in their journey to make sure that what they're doing is also evidence-based and they can go back and look at that. In my local community, we don't have enough services. I am refining my practice, so I am spending less time working directly with families, and I'm trying to move more into supporting professionals in their learning, in the parent coaching, and in the streamlining their paperwork. But there's also not an endless supply of money. And so the coaching, I work with families 1 hour a week. The relationship strength-based coaching and the SLP Common Core, the other reason they come together is this efficiency. In our community, we do not have enough speech-language pathologists, and it's the same, I know, across Canada, and I'm sure a lot of other countries struggle with this, is having enough professionals. And often it's, oh, we just need more professionals, or we just need more money. Well, and the reality is, we're not going to get more professionals right away. And as we get new ones, other ones are going to leave. So parent coaching is really, from my point of view, extremely efficient. And while it can be really slow at the start, the changes are ones that continue on. That foundation is so strong. And I literally work myself out of a job. I start weekly, 1 hour a week. And that's the service the family gets from me. And they go from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly, and then I'm not needed. Now, they may need other professionals later on, but for me, that's efficient. If I can if I can support families who are the lifelong advocates and work myself out of a job and have them able to problem solve and have the skills that they need to advocate, or the skills they need to continue to support, or even the skills to know what other professionals are a right match for them in their learning and how they learn and what they want for their child, that's efficient. It would be nice if we had a whole bunch more money. It would be nice if we had a whole bunch more professionals, but we have to learn to be innovative. We have to learn to do things differently, because I personally don't think that that is going to be a reality. So through my journey of efficiency, of doing things that are hard, I have come to a place of joy. So my journey through the hard work, gift to be able to work with families using a parent coaching approach, has resulted in bringing so much joy to me. And I feel really emotional about that. So I know when I'm feeling emotional, that's a good thing. It means I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I hope that everyone can find their joy in what they do. But it might be through a lot of hard work and really looking at ourselves and what's holding us back in that work. Thank you for listening, and all the best on your journeys.